This is Memphis Music Interview, and this week's guest is a man who played with the Hot Dogs, Black Oak, Arkansas, Albert King, and the Memphis All-Stars, Greg Redding. I'm Mitch McCracken, and Greg tells some amazing stories in this interview, so let's get started. The first thing I asked was when he got interested in music.
If you take it back to the beginning, you'd have to go back to Sikeston, Missouri, 1960. I was in the 5th grade. I was in love with music. Absolutely, the Phil Spector sound was just starting to come out with the Ronettes, Be My Baby, and all that stuff to do Run Run. And I could tell that music had an effect on me. That it was, you know, it was just that thing. When you heard, I heard music, it just made my hair stand up and just affected me. So the summer before the 6th grade, actually in the 6th grade, they gave us a musical aptitude test in the 6th grade at the end of the year. Mm-hmm. And I took the test and did all these things, and they sent me a letter in the middle of the summertime and said, you scored the highest in the city. Of course, there's only 2,500 people in the whole city of Sikeston at the time, but still, they said, you have your choice to either be in the band or the orchestra.
Wow.
See, and this is, you know, a small town in Missouri, but they had a band and an orchestra program, which I found out later on when I moved to Memphis wasn't always the case, right, even in bigger cities. But my heart's desire was to be a concert violinist.
Really?
I loved the sound of the violin and so badly wanted to play one. So when I got the thing, the orchestra instructor lived right down the street from us. I mean, everybody lived in the neighborhood in Sikeston. So I rode my bicycle down to talk to him and go, you know, look, I got this letter. He goes, oh, yeah, what do you want to do? I said, I want to play violin. He goes, okay. So he set up a meeting with my parents. We went down to his house, and he explained to him it'd be about $125 to get a decent beginner violin. Well, my old man had it in his mind that I'm going to be the next shortstop for the St. Louis Cardinals, and that playing violin is a sissy thing to do.
No.
And he forbid it.
Oh, whoa.
And I was like, man, you know, okay. So I went back down to the orchestra instructor and I said, all right, here's my situation. He's not going to spring for any money. Do I have any other options? He said, yeah. He said, if you'll play bass violin, the big upright thing, he said, we'll give you one for home and there's one at the school that you can play. Won't cost you a dime. I said, I'm in. You know, if that's what it is, that's what it is. It's not quite my heart's desire, but it's a stringed instrument and I'm in the orchestra and that's fine. So that was my first instrument, and 6th, 7th, 8th, and 9th grade, that's what I studied. And it was actually classically trained, played in the orchestra with the bow and the whole 9 yards. Still not realizing the rockabilly thing had not really struck me. So right. I'm thinking strictly classical, and I'm loving it and I'm having a great time. So I found out as time went on, that was probably the best start for a musician is to learn the bass, because the bass is such a powerful instrument as far as what notes it can do. Like you can take 3 notes on a piano and the bass note can change it to 6 different chords depending on what note he's playing. It's just, he's got the power to do that just with the root note. So anyway, long story short, all of a sudden, January of 1965, midterm of my 9th grade year, my old man gets transferred. We're going to Memphis.
Won't talk about Memphis. Good town I know. Sun is up and sky is blue. I'm feeling good, I hope you are too. Hey, hey. It's just another lovely day. Ow. Beale Street under my shoes. Feeling me with the rhythm and blues. Hey, hey, it's just another lovely day. Now, well, it's Memphis and me. What more can I say? The food and music's driving me insane. We lift our hands to the sky above and say, Lord, please don't let it rain. No, 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 no. It's just another day, another lovely Memphis day. I can feel the blues just roll away. We got a lot to do on the lovely Memphis day. Hey, red first game and a Broadway show. Grayson is a good place to go. Yeah, it's just another lovely day. Oh. Rendezvous at the zoo, yeah. The lazy rolling river queen, yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Just another lovely day. And listen, when the sun goes down, we won't be far from the symphony under the stars. The night is young, so our hearts, we're gonna prove it, baby. After dark, oh, let me say it one time. It's just another day. Oh yeah, another lovely Memphis day. I can feel my blues just rolling away. We got a lot to do on the lovely Memphis day. It's just another day. I tell you what, go get Mama Nina and let's take a swim. Come on. Ow. Won't you play that thing, boy? Play one time. I don't believe it hurt you, son. It's just another day. Hey, another lovely Memphis day. Woo! And I'm like Otis Redding, sitting on the dock of the bay. Said we got a lot to do on this lovely day. It's just another day, y'all. Help me now. Another lovely Memphis day. Hey, let's get on the Memphis Queen. Collard greens. Come on, y'all. We got a lot to do on a... It's just another day. Another lovely Memphis day. I'm gonna go sit in my front yard and listen to the Memphis All-Stars. We got a lot to do on a... Memphis day. It's just another day. Let's see some black eyed peas right here. I'm gonna play that. It's just another lovely Memphis day. Hey, but wait a minute. I forgot something. Bartender, come here. Pay me a bill, if you don't mind. We got a lot to do.
Lovely Memphis Day by Greg Redding and the Memphis All-Stars. So your dad was transferred to Memphis.
Got out for Christmas vacation, January the 5th. We were in Memphis. Let me back up first of all. I'm getting ahead of myself. After I learned, was doing bass and everything, guitar seemed like a natural thing. Okay, if I can't get a violin, maybe I can get a guitar. So I got heavy into New Christian Minstrels, Kingston Trio, Peter, Paul, and Mary. The whole folk thing was really going on then.
Right.
And I found a song book, and my brother, what happened was my brother had gotten one of those old Sears and Roebuck Stella guitars, acoustics, for Christmas one year, but he never played it. So I pulled it out from under the bed, got some chord books, and started learning how to play it. Well, then all of a sudden, the revelation that I'm sure, as you've probably heard from 99.9% of the musicians my age, what was the turning point in your life? Well, it had to be February 1964.
Right.
At Sullivan's show. Okay.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
And right before that happened, my dad would bring home records. Even though he was not my favorite person in the world for not letting me get a violin, he had a connection with somebody that was a record distributor at Malone and Hyde, and he worked for Libby Foods, so they would swap surplus merchandise.
Mm-hmm.
And he'd bring home the newest Beach Boy record or the newest Peter, Paul, and Mary, whatever it may be. And then one day he walked in. He said, I don't know what this is, but they tell me that this is the hottest thing that's ever happened. And he hands me this album, and I looked at it, and it says Meet the Beatles.
Oh, God. That was a great album.
Yeah. And I put it on, and I went, oh, my God, I can do this. And then a couple of months later when they played on the Ed Sullivan Show, and I saw that it was just 4 regular guys, and they were, and plus the girls were going nuts. So this is really, really ringing true for me. And I said, okay, I've got to get an electric guitar. And shortly thereafter is when Hard Day's Night came out.
Mm-hmm.
So my mother told me that if I would learn all the songs on Hard Day's Night, she would make sure that I got an electric guitar. And I said, okay. So the movie's showing at the Malone Theater in Sykeston. It's there for a whole week.
Uh-huh.
And I went to the manager of the movie theater. I said, look, I need to see this movie as many times as I can. I said, what about if I clean up in between showings, sweep the floors, empty the trash cans, whatever, so that I can just stay? And he said, yeah, sure, no problem. So for 7 or 8 days, every day was down to the Malone Theater, and I'd watch George Harrison and John Lennon's Fingers, and I'd kind of make little notes, and then I'd run home, put the record on, and day by day, started getting a grasp on it. So finally, at the end of the week, I called my mom, sit down.
Wow.
And the one that got her was the guitar solo on And I Love Her.
Uh-huh.
Da, 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 da. And I had that down pat. I mean, I'd really gotten that good. So she said, all right, you've kept your end of the bargain. And I could tell there was still some resistance from my father. But I believe in later years I realized that she probably said something to the effect of, if you ever want to see me naked again, you better buy this boy a guitar. So she took me down to Collins Music and bought me an Alamo, and bought me an Alamo Fiesta guitar that had like 3 pickups, 12 knobs, but it was electric and it was mine, man. Uh-huh. So I started playing that and having a good time with it. Then shortly thereafter, we moved to Memphis, and I had my amp and my guitar. After I got to Memphis and started hanging and meeting people after a while, because, coming in midterm, you're just kind of like the onion in the petunia patch as far as being accepted. Plus, I'm just a country hick as far as these people are concerned. I got a flat top with butch wax.
Oh, yeah.
And, but the thing I started noticing was there was a lot of bands in this town. I mean, every school had at least 2 or 3 bands that were like playing at the athletic club here or the CYO and stuff like that. And I'm like, wow, wait a minute. Okay, so I'm checking it out and trying to make friends. But the one thing I'm realizing is I get to know all these guys, the way bands usually started, there would be a drummer and 3 guitar players.
Mm-hmm.
And whoever was the worst guitar player got relegated to bass.
Right.
So I'm like, I know how to play bass. That's what I do.
Mm-hmm.
So there was this one band called The Foremost out in Parkway Village, and their bass player, his parents made him quit the band because his grades were bad for the 9 weeks or whatever they did back then.
Mm-hmm.
And so they said, can you really play bass? And I went, yeah, I can. So I went home to my mom. I said, I got to get a bass. I need a bass and an amp right now. I'm going to be in a band. She said, okay. Went and got me a Hackstrom bass and a Gibson amp. And I went to rehearsal and learned all the songs. And the first gig was at the Rainbow Skating Rink on Lamar Avenue.
Right. I remember that.
I made $2.50 and thought I was on top of the world. I mean, just, oh, this is great. And the girl thing, it was just a total, it was the perfect package. I was so happy. So anyway, the band, as they did back then, started falling apart. I realized it was time to leave. In the meantime, my brother Dan, who was also a bass player, we both came up playing upright bass, had started another band called the Village Sound.
Oh.
And I said, well, I want to be in y'all's band. And they said, well, that would be great, except we don't need 2 bass players. And we've already got 3 guitar players. I said, I'll play organ.
Wow.
Okay. So I went, my parents, well, my mother, my mom was the, plus she was managing this band, the Village Sound. She'd taken the reins on it and everything. So I went and bought an organ. I started taking lessons from Rick Allen, who was playing with the Coachmen at the time.
Uh-huh.
And the Swinging Yo-Yos. And Rick was the hot organ player in Memphis at the time. And he'd come over once a week and he'd show me stuff. And I had an aptitude for it. And I took to it very quickly and really realized, ooh, I really like this. But I was going to get in just because, hey, my brother's in the band and my mom's manager. I'm getting in this band.
I got connections.
Yeah. So my chops started getting better and better, and the more I hung with Rick, the better it got. And the band was starting to pick up some steam. And every Friday and Saturday night, they had, there's this place out in Parkway Village called the Parkway Village Athletic Club.
Mm-hmm.
And they had bands there every weekend. So I would go to hear the other bands, see what the musicians were like, what they were playing. And, of course, that back then it was bands like the Rapids and Larry Raspberry and the Gentrys, which were, they were gods, okay?
Yeah, exactly,
I mean, because when I first moved to Memphis, one of the first things that happened was I turned on the TV and the Ted Mack Amateur Hour came on.
Uh-huh.
And it said, live, here we got one of our bands coming in from Memphis, Tennessee, the Gentrys. I went, what? So, you know, I seeing them live really inspired me a lot. And so we kept going. Then one night I walked in there and there was a band called the Castlemen playing. And they had 2 lead singers, a guy named Taft Laster and a guy named Pat Taylor.
Yeah.
And they were doing a Walker Brothers song, The Sun Won't Shine Anymore. And then they went straight into You've Lost That Love and Feeling by the Righteous Brothers. And they're nailing this stuff, man.
Uh-huh.
And they took a break and I walked over and introduced myself to Pat. I said, man, what a voice, dude. I said, I got to figure a way to get y'all in my band. And so somehow or another, I wrangled it to where their drummer and guitar player, I was still playing bass at this time.
Uh-huh.
In fact, they were in the foremost. Actually, they started with me in the foremost, and then it split up. And then when I got to the Village Sound, I'd already known them. In the meantime, my parents had met Louis Paul.
Oh, wow.
And they're managing him.
Uh-huh.
Okay, they've got him signed to Onyx Records, and they're managing him. And he convinces my parents that I need a Hammond B3. And I'm like, listen to him, okay?
Yeah.
You know,
he knows what he's talking about.
Because you got to, in 1967, they were $5,200.
Mm-hmm.
In 1967 money.
Right.
So a lot of cash back then.
A lot
of cash. So anyway, my parents sprung for the B3, and which changed us completely. I mean, it just changed the sound of the band completely. Mm-hmm. And the band kept going, and it did well. And we were played in front of the Young Rascals. They opened for them at the Coliseum. My mom somehow walked into Stax Records.
Uh-huh.
And found Jim Stewart and convinced him that he needed to sign us because they had the Hip Records, which was the white subsidiary. And so we had out Hey Jack, Don't Hijack My Plane.
Right.
Sally's Got a Good Thing. Truth or Consequences. And they were all on Hip Records.
Uh-huh.
And produced by Cropper.
I left you standing in Detroit. I left you standing alone. Told you I wouldn't be long. Told you I'd be back home. Hey, I told you I'd be back home.
Greg Redding with the Village Sound and Hey Jack, Don't Hijack My Plane. Co-written by AllMemphisMusic.com's John Scott and his then brother-in-law, Cecil O'Daniel. The whole time we were listening to the song, Greg was talking. So let's rejoin him now and see what he's saying.
Of course, you remember back then, you could get a record played on the radio.
Yeah.
You know, very simply just walk in, hey, how are you?
Yeah, play this.
Take a listen if you like it, you know. And we were just swamped. You know, I mean, it was like playing all the time. George Klein had us on Talent Party.
Now, was this about the time that, didn't you used to play the Gateway Club?
Yeah, we played there a lot. So the Village Sound went on for a year or so. Then they added another singer, David Mayo. You know, and that's when it became the Three Dog Night knockoff.
Uh-huh.
You know, and they were really good at it. I wasn't that into that whole situation.
Uh-huh.
Okay. And I wasn't the easiest person to get along with, and compromise was not really a strong word in my vocabulary. So being the hard-headed, arrogant little punk that I was back then, I pretty much said, I'm going to go this way, and they went that way. So I went off the other way, and that's when I met, Dan Penn. And he had the Beautiful Sounds recording studio over here on Highland.
Uh-huh.
And somehow or another, he liked my organ playing, and I wound up getting some session work with him, which was way cool. I did a B.J. Thomas album and a Howard Keel album, and played all over Dan's Nobody's Fools album, and actually co-wrote a song called Prayer for Peace with him, along with Bill Rennie. And that's when I first met Bill, and that's what we got together. And another guitar player named Tony O'Terry, and the Shortcuts drummer Robert Murray had just left the Shortcuts, and we formed a band called Silver.
Right, I remember that.
And traveled all around. I mean, we played and played and played and played and played and played. And finally, after a couple of years, Tony got tired. He just got burned out. He said, I don't want to do this anymore, man. I'm gone. I'm going to get a real job and start a business, which he's an incredibly successful businessman. So somehow or another, somebody turned us on to this young guitar player named Jack Holder. And I remember meeting him from time to time, but never really knew him or played or heard him play or anything. Well, he walks in the first day of practice, and we work up like 35 songs. You know, and we're working up all the ZZ Top stuff, which he is just playing note for note. And I'm like, ooh, see, and I'm not really a guitar player yet. I'm strictly on organ, and I'm just going, man, this guy is amazing. So we did that for about, from, say, 70 to right at 71. It didn't last a real long time, and then Jack decided he wanted to go do something else, and the band kind of splintered, and at which time Bill and I were sitting in our house over at Parkway and Lamar behind Tom Bell Chevrolet, and this black drummer that I knew from Stax, Roy Cunningham, Carl's brother. There was like 3 Cunningham brothers, and they were all drummers. One was with the Bar-Kays, got killed in a plane crash.
Right.
The other was Blair, wound up working with Haircut 100 and Paul McCartney.
Uh-huh.
And then there was Roy. Anyway, he comes in the door, he goes, "Say, man, y'all want to gig with Albert King?" I said, "What am I playing?" He goes, I needed you to play rhythm guitar. And I'm like, okay. And I mean, I had never played a lot. I was just starting to play some guitar in the band, you know. The reason being is I'd lost a couple of organs in fires by this time.
Oh, wow.
Actually, I'd lost one. In 1970, we were playing a gig in Little Rock, Arkansas at the Checkmate Club. Got off about 3 o'clock in the morning, and I got a phone call, emergency phone call. Never a good sign. So I answered the phone, and it was my first wife telling me that my brother had just died here in Memphis.
Wow.
And so I was like, oh, damn, okay. So I jumped in the van, went home, took care of all that stuff, you know, and trying to deal. And him and I were, that's the bass player.
Right.
That we, you know,
wow.
Yeah, we were this like a year and 9 months apart, so it was very close. And so got all that done, got home from the funeral, and the phone rang, and it was Bill Rennie from Little Rock, and he goes, "Man, are you sitting down?" I said, "I don't know." "Why?" He said, "I don't know how to tell you this, but the club burned down last night with all of our gear in it." I said, "Oh, well." You know, and by this, I mean, it didn't even really affect me. You know, I mean, I had so much going on, it was just like, Well, ain't that something, you know? So anyway, I called my old man. I said, by any chance do I have insurance on that organ? He goes, yeah, it's on my homeowner's insurance. I said, call the insurance company. He goes, why? I said, well, the organ burned up in a club fire. He said, I'll take care of it. So I got a second organ, so that was no problem. So when the first organ burned up, I got a second one, and I was still good with that. So anyway, I had that organ and done the Albert King thing and had just played a little bit of guitar. I mean, I was not a very good guitar player at all. In fact, I listened back to some hot dog stuff the other day and realized these guys had the patience of Job, because I basically sucked as a guitar player when I first started. I didn't.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm playing against Jack Holder, and Jack Holder's, you know, luckily I learned and absorbed so much from being on the stage with him that, you know, and I still to this day tell him, I said, man, you're my biggest influence.
Mm-hmm.
So I said, because you got to realize when Clapton and Page and Hendrix and all that stuff was breaking out, I was an organ player.
Mm-hmm.
So it didn't really resonate as
Right.
far as a guitar player. I said, I got more from you in the couple of years that we played together
Mm-hmm.
in Silver. I said, he's like, oh, don't say that. I said, no, it's true.
Well, see, and the thing about him is he's not only talented, he is so gracious and
Well,
so humble.
Him and I, we got history. I mean, for instance, we hadn't really had a conversation in probably 20 years
Really?
at one point.
Wow.
And it's the kind of relationship where even after 20 years, I mean, we'd see each other and talk and stuff, but we hadn't really been together. But I'll
Right.
get into that whole, but I called him. I said, man, my band, the All-Stars, just cut these songs over at Arden, but we ran out of money. I need to get them mixed. Can you help me out? Yeah, bring them over. So anyway, back to how Jack got in the band, Silver Paper. It finally fell apart, and Bill Rennie and I were offered a job with Albert King.
Mm-hmm.
And so we took all of our stuff, put it in a cab, got on a plane, flew to Chicago, and spent about a year and a half on the Chitlin circuit, you know.
Yeah.
And finally I just wasn't digging the whole, I mean, we were making $165 a week and had to pay for our own hotel rooms. So we were sleeping 6 to a room to try to save money. You know, It just really wasn't that good of a thing. So when I came back to Memphis, I just picked up a club gig at a place called the Sports Page Lounge out on Winchester at the time. And one morning the phone rang. And seeing Bill and I had recorded some earlier with Terry Manning over at the old Arden over on National, and had done a few things. And we loved working with Terry, and Terry seemed to like what we were doing. So anyway, out of the blue, he just called. He said, you know, we got this new studio over on Madison. He said, do you and Bill have any songs? I said, well, as a matter of fact, yeah, we've been writing like crazy, because when we were on the road, we didn't have nothing to do. So we'd sit down and get happy and start writing songs. I said, and I explained to him, I said, look, I'll be glad to come over and play them for you, but keep in mind, I'm not the singer, okay? So if it sounds like Barry Manilow with asthma, don't hold it against us.
Mm-hmm.
You know? He said, not a problem. So I remember one Saturday morning, I got on my bicycle with my acoustic guitar, and I lived at Parkway in Lamar, and came right down Cooper Street
Uh-huh.
to Madison, took a left, 2000 Madison, pulled in there, sat down for about 30 minutes with Terry, and started playing him some of the songs that Bill and I had written. He goes, so I want to do something with you guys. I want to make a record. So I called Rennie. I said, man, don't ask me how this happened. I said, but it looks like we're fixing to make an album.
Hot dog.
Well, now we're going to get into some of the, okay. So we go in and start knocking down some demos on this stuff. We don't have a band.
Uh-huh.
Okay. It's just him and I. And so what we're doing is we're cutting the tracks with acoustic guitar and bass. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
And after the first session, we'd knocked out about 2 or 3 songs that day. And Terry goes, what do you want to call this thing? And I'm like, I don't know. He said, well, I'm just going to put this down. And he writes The Hot Dogs
Uh-huh.
on the album, on the tape box. I'm like, okay. You know, maybe nothing's going to happen. But anyway, time went on and it started developing. And of course, then Jack got wind of it.
Mm-hmm.
And, he wanted to come in and do some stuff, which was fine with us because, you know, even Terry, I think at one point, the Hot Dogs' first album was more of a vehicle for Terry to play guitar on. And Terry is an incredibly great guitar player.
Mm-hmm.
But we were looking at it from a band aspect and trying to find some people. And I was gigging with Eddie Harrison out at the Red Velvet Lounge, and he'd hired this guy named Fred Prouty to play drums.
Right.
Fred just came in from Muscle Shoals. He'd been playing at Muscle Shoals Sounds, played on One Bad Apple Don't Spoil the Whole Bunch by the Osmond Brothers, had great studio chops. So I just asked him, I said, man, you want to come play on some of this stuff? And he was like, yeah, sure, sounds great. So then it just kind of snowballed, and it started becoming this real thing, and it was a real band, and I was getting to be more on keyboards than guitar and acoustic guitar and stuff. And the album got finished, and October of 73, I believe, was the release date on it. And it came out, and Rolling Stone gave it, and this is after the Big Star had already done their thing, you know, and made some inroads and stuff. In fact, Chris had already left the band. I was in the process of leaving Big Star when we started releasing our record, you know.
Uh-huh.
And I mean, the Big Star thing, I remember the first time I heard the Big Star album, and I heard Chris's guitar sounds, and I thought to myself, if God was a guitar sound, it would be that right there. I mean, it was the most amazing. It was like, this is what I've strived to get, and I found later he's just this audio genius. He just had the knack for making things sound that way. And that's when I also realized that because I was going around to all the engineers, okay, what's he playing through? What's he plugged into? What kind of effects? What kind of limiters, you know, and compressors and stuff. And it was basically the same stuff I was doing. The difference was what was coming out of his hands versus what would come out of my hands is where the difference was. You can all play through the same gear, but it's the touch and the approach that Chris had that made it sound like that. And I said, well, that's his sound. I'll never get it. But anyway, so the album comes out, and we do a live quad broadcast on FM 100, which I'm still trying to figure out what that was all about. Because I would imagine maybe a half a dozen people in the city of Memphis had quad systems to listen to.
Right. You know.
Yeah.
They thought that was going to be the next best thing.
In
fact, WRVR, the river, used to be known as Quad 104. Yeah. So they had 4 songs that they just kept playing over and over.
So we got going pretty good, and we were, being distributed by Stax. And the problem with that was, and I had grown up at Stax, so I knew everybody over there. I'd worked in the demo studio for the songwriters, and I knew everybody real well. But the problem was, very simply put, at that point in time, and Big Star pretty much got the same thing, was Stax was a black label R&B, and they had a whole different way of getting airplay and records into the stores and stuff. It's a whole different approach than the white side of the thing.
Right.
And they didn't really have the personnel with enough savvy in the white market to make it happen for us. And we found that to be true in 74, right at mid-74, we got booked at the Whiskey A Go-Go. Okay. Now this is a big deal.
Yeah.
That's one of the hallmarks that you shoot for in your career is something like the Whiskey A Go-Go. They fly us out there, and we even had people drive the gear out there and everything. So the first day we get there and we're setting up and doing our little sound check and everything, then it's time for the performance. We're opening for Status Quo. Had out pictures of Max Stickman and all that stuff. So we're standing backstage, and the guy gets on the microphone, the MC, and goes, "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Whiskey A Go-Go. It is our great pleasure to introduce to you a band that we're sure you'll relish. A band that is destined to cut the mustard. Please get off your buns and let's hear it for the hot dogs."
Oh my God.
Yeah. Well, let me tell you, they had to drag my butt out there because at that point in time right there, I made a vow to myself, this has got to change.
Right.
There's nothing cool. I mean, I felt like we were the frickin' Banana Splits. Remember the Saturday morning bananas?
Yeah.
That's what I felt like. Just put some costumes on us and call us the hot dogs,
Couldn't voice your feelings when we met, and I thought it sad. Time has brought you out some, and I'm starting to learn how good love goes back. So while you're talking, tell me, why don't you say what you
the Hot Dogs, and the title of their album, Say What You Mean, on allmemphismusic.com. Okay, Greg, go.
So I started campaigning really hard for the hopes of changing the name. Of course, nobody would hear about it.
Uh-huh.
So in the meantime, we start the second album. Now it's a very band-oriented album, and it's much more rock. The first Hot Dog album was extremely acoustic and very laid back, and did not play well at the Whiskey A Go-Go.
Right.
It was pretty much, a turd in the punch bowl when we hit that thing. Can I say that on?
Yeah.
Okay.
You can say whatever you want. This is internet radio.
Okay. I mean, it didn't fly well at all. In fact, we got so frustrated in the week we were there. At the time, ZZ Top was still a very localized southern band out of Texas, and they hadn't heard of them in California. So we just started pulling ZZ Top songs out and playing, and they loved us.
I bet.
So we did that, and I got back, and so we started thinking that's our strength, really, is to be more like that. Okay. So we started cutting the second album, and right around late 74 into 75, we were playing the High Cotton over on Cooper, right next to Strings.
Yeah,
Remember that? We played one night, came home. I lived actually about 5 blocks from here down on Ellsworth at the time. Bill Rennie was living with me in the same house. And Jack, we were all just kind of hanging out. Jack had a bit to drink that night, and all of a sudden a friend of ours comes banging on the front door. We let him in. We said, man, what's the matter? He goes, man, the High Cotton just burned down.
Oh, yeah.
With all your gear in it.
Again.
This is my B3 number 2.
Wow.
Okay. And we met this manager guy named Jim Zumwalt. And Jim was just getting into the business and had just gotten it past his bar exam and all this other stuff. Well, anyway, he found a way to come up with about $15,000 to re-gear us, and we're like, okay, yeah, we'll sign with you. I don't see anything else to do. And in the meantime, and this is where we really started realizing we were in a dead-end situation. One day at Ardent, we were just messing around with I Walk the Line by Johnny Cash. And we had kind of put I guess you'd almost call punk, new wave thing to it. But this is still 74,
Right.
There is none of that yet. We're just popping on it. It started at real country and then just broke into this garage band, just kick butt arrangement of it. And Terry Manning walked in and went, oh my God, what are you doing? What is that? We said, man, what do you think about this? This is just kind of a little thing we came up with for I Walk the Line. Well, his hair was standing straight up. He immediately went to the phone and called down the street to Roland James at Sonic. The old Sonic studio at Belvedere and Madison, and said, can we book the studio? I need to bring my band down there and cut a track. We want to cut it at Sonic on a 4-track. And Roland said, yeah, I ain't doing nothing. Come on down. You going to send me? He said, can I just send you a bill? He said, send us a bill. So we went down there and within an hour had it cut. In fact, that picture right there is the day we cut it. That's the old Sonic right there.
Wow.
We're in the studio. And so Terry took the tapes back to Ardent, dropped it to the 16-track, added the vocals, mixed it, got it all right. And Stax, we put it out as a single, and it was a turntable hit. Meaning you could drive, I could drive from here to Ardent, and I could hear it on HBQ, MPS, and FM 100, all at the same time.
I keep
down to Pop Tunes, couldn't buy it. No product anywhere.
Oh, wow. So you weren't sold out. They didn't have any to begin with.
No.
Oh, wow.
That was, and so at this point, because I know, I'm pretty sure that we've got at least a fairly decent hit record here.
Mm-hmm.
People are responding to it extremely well. The radio stations are loving it because it's under 3 minutes and they can use it, and it had a nice fade to it where they could use the fade or the dead ending, whichever you wanted to use, talk in and out of it the whole 9 yards. It was perfect for radio. So we asked for a meeting with Al Bell and said, Mr. Bell, what's the story here? We got, I said, I can put you in my car right now. I said, I'm sure you don't listen to the radio that much, being in the music business and all that stuff. He says, well, whatever. I said, fact is, I can put you in the car. We can drive from one end of this town to the other, and within the hour, you'll hear this song on every radio station in the city. Why don't we have any product in the store? And he just got this really defeated look in his face. He said, well, I'm just going to be honest with you guys. He said, every bit of our product, stacks included, is in a warehouse in New Jersey, because this is when they had moved to CBS.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was the beginning of the end at that point in time. So we realized, well, this ain't going to happen at all. And the band started splintering. Jack went one way. Bill and Fred went another way. I wound up with the band, and it consisted of me, David Beaver, Pat Taylor, and a drummer from Florida. And we did that for a while. Then one day, I was sitting at Ardent, which I did a lot of because that was our home,
Mm-hmm.
And the manager for Black Oak, Arkansas, who almost managed the hot dogs for a minute, came in, and he knew me and I knew him. He goes, what are you up to? I said, not much anything. He says, you want to try out for Black Oak? I said, tell me more. He goes, well, if you get the gig, it's like this. You'll make $10,000 a year, which in 1976 was a lot of money.
Mm-hmm.
Especially since I was making $65 a week in the hot dogs.
Yeah.
You'll never touch another piece of equipment. It's nothing but big concerts and stadiums. And you'll get more women than Frank Sinatra.
Sign me up.
I'm in, man. You could have got me with just the last part of that thing.
Yeah.
It's not a problem. So, and he's putting the whole Star Trip on us. He flies us up in a rented plane and everything. Or me anyway. Well, of course, Holder gets wind of it. And he's like, hey, man, what about da-da-da? And I said, hey, come on. And I looked at, Butch Stone, the manager. I said, man, Jack Holder wants to come too. Because two of their guitar, they had 3 guitar players and 2 of them had just left. And, he said, yeah, that might work. And so what happened, we got the gig, and then basically the next Black Oak album, Race with the Devil, 90% of the songs would have been the Hot Dog second album.
Wow. Whoa.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Well, see, he had heard us and heard the songs and loved the songs.
Right.
So he said, when he hired, he says, what I'm planning on doing is just, we want to record your songs on the next album. I said, yeah, sure, whatever. So we wound up signing with Capricorn Records.
Uh-huh.
Went down to Macon, Georgia. And this is where I started wondering what's going on here. They hired a producer whose only claim to fame was, and it's a pretty solid claim to fame, but it didn't really fit us, is he had produced the first 3 Jackson 5 albums. He had written 1, 2, 3, I Want You Back. But I'm like, wait a minute,
Kind of a different sound.
yeah, and we're going down to the Southern rock capital of the United States of America, where the
right.
Allman Brothers and
Marshall
C-Level,
Tucker.
Marshall Tucker, all these guys, and it was a great studio, but this guy didn't have a clue as far as how to cut a rock band,
Mm-hmm.
and him and I butted heads from the minute we got in the studio,
Mm-hmm.
and so the record got finished. I didn't like it that much. I felt like it sounded like a Motown record.
Mm-hmm.
It was like rock and roll, a heavy rock band with a lot of clean guitars in it. I'm just like, So anyway, come to find out, that thing sold 450,000 records, of which I never saw a dime of.
Really?
Yeah, well, that's another whole story in itself. But then we went back to cut a second album, and they wanted us to go disco, because now it's 77, almost 78. Staying Alive, the Bee Gees.
Disco?
Yeah.
Black Oak Disco?
Oh, I could play you some of the cuts on the album. Well, in retrospect, later on, Rolling Stone classified it as one of 100 worst albums of the 70s. So, that was a beautiful thing right there. And so I saw the ship starting to sink, and this guy had us in some ironclad contracts where if you just walked away, he could freeze you up to never do anything else again as long as you lived.
He was known for that.
I know.
Now.
I know. Still. So what I did is I saw the leaks in the boat,
Mm-hmm.
and it was coming time for after the first 2 years, I was going to get a substantial raise, almost double what I was making.
Mm-hmm.
And sure enough, it came about that time, and he sat me down and said, I can't pay your raise. I said, okay. I said, so what do we do? He said, in fact, I can't even pay you what I'm paying you now. He said, you can have a free place to live up here in the lodge, and I'll pay you $150 a week. I said, let me think about it. And that's when they all lived up in that big compound. I never lived behind that fence. I refused to do it, which is another reason. I mean, I've always been the rebel, okay? I'm not going with the crowd. And plus, I got a lot of friends up here, and they're not allowed back to come to my house because it's behind the fence and it ain't going to work. So I always lived somewhere else.
Mm-hmm.
So I lived about 20 miles down the road, got in my car, went straight back to my house, stopped at a U-Haul rental place, rented a truck, backed it up to my driveway.
See ya.
Started loading stuff, and about halfway through the load-in, here comes the manager from Black Oak. I try not to mention his name. It keeps me out of lawsuits and stuff,
Yeah.
And he said, what's going on? I said, well, man, as far as I can see, you're in breach of contract, and I'm going to take that and go. He said, well, I can't stop you. So I left. See you later.
Well, now what was Andy Tanis involved then?
See, Andy got the gig. Andy blew over my. He drove 285 miles in an ice storm to get up there to audition.
Uh-huh.
And he knew it was like he knew every Black Oak song that had ever been written or something. I remember him just having a great grasp on all the material, and so we were like, plus he had the perfect rock star look. I mean, Andy had the big curly bushy hair,
right.
and he just looked the part, so, and he was a nice guy. We all kind of hit it off pretty well. So we're like, yeah, okay, that'll work, and Joe Williams came up. He got the gig, and that became the band. Me and Jack, Andy and Joel, and a guitar player that had been with him, Jimmy Henderson, had been with him for several years at that point in time, and Jim Dandy.
Right.
And we turned it into a pretty kick-ass band.
Uh-huh.
And live, we were a force to be reckoned with live because we really, really, really had it going good. I mean, it was solid, and the material was good. The first night with Black Oak, Arkansas, Cobo Hall, Detroit, Michigan. 17,000 people. The place is packed. Okay. This is my first gig. Now, I'd gone out and bought some really nice clothes. Went to Chelsea Limited over on Madison.
Yeah.
Butch, they gave me some money to go. Man, I need some, So I had on a pair of crushed velvet pants, skin tight. Underwear were not an option. Okay. And a kimono. I mean, and I was looking good, man. So the first song comes up and we're playing it. There's this big dynamic ending thing. Down, 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 down. And I jump up and I come down onto one knee. And when I did, my pants split from the zipper halfway down to my knee on my left side. Okay. Well, like I said, underwear were an option, which I didn't decide to exercise. So I'm like, okay, and I got my guitar and my little bit of kimono, but basically the first couple of rows are getting to know me very, very well, And so I ran back to my road guys. I said, man, I got a problem here. No, they're laughing so hard they're about to pee their pants. So what do they do? Guy grabs a roll of duct tape. Come here.
Yeah.
So he just starts taping, right? And he's taping and he's taping and he's taping and he's taping. I'm like, okay. So now every time I move, I'm losing hair. Okay, because the tape is just just taking hair off everything. That's tender hair there. That's that's not arm hair. That's some tender hair. That's bring a tear to your eye hair. You know what I'm saying? So they're kind. there comes a point in the show where Jim does a rap right before Halls of Karma. Lord have mercy on my soul and everything.
Yeah.
So in the meantime, I said, go get me some freaking pants, man. So came time, I ran behind the amp line. They had me another pair of pants. So I had on these brand new stacked python skin boots.
Uh-huh.
You know, took those off, got my pants, and ripped off the tape.
Oh.
And I mean, I did the bikini wax way before they had ever invented the thing. Okay. I mean, I still don't have a lot of hair on this side anymore. So I ripped it off because I'm frantic. I got to get back on stage because I'm figuring I'm about halfway home already, you know. So I get my pants back on and I hear the cue, and all the amps at this time, there was a riser, a ramp to a riser about that tall where all the amps stood on. We could run up and down it and do all kinds of wild stuff.
About 3 feet.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so about that time I heard him say, and have Lord have mercy on my soul. And that's where the dun 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 dun. So I come around, and just as the band comes in, I jump off the riser and I hit the stage, and my heels basically just grazed and came out from under me.
Oh, no.
So I do one of those, whoop, bam!
Oh.
And I'm flat on my back,
Playing.
and pretty much sure, you know, I hope I remember some of this because this is it. I mean, and I go back to the dressing room. I'm in absolute tears. Okay. I'm like, and I'm over in the corner in the dressing room. And I got my head down and, and man, this is the kind of guy Jim Dandy is right here.
Uh-huh.
He walks over, puts his arm around me. He goes, man, you know, playing live's kind of like water skiing. If you don't fall, you ain't trying. He said, welcome to the Bust Your Ass on Stage Club, man. He said, I'm the president of it. And I mean, how much more gracious could a guy be? I mean, no, here's this little rookie, you know, first night out and just has basically screwed the pooch from front to back as far as not being cool. You know? And I mean, from that day on, I was like, man, I got your back, buddy. You know, but that's the way Jim's always been. He just has a heart of gold, and he's such a tender person inside. I mean, really and truly, just a heart of. I kept going with Black Oak, and we cut the second album, and it really, really sucked. So we came to the point where they couldn't pay me my salary anymore, and Jack and I both pretty much said bye.
Yep.
I'd packed the truck up, and was going to leave the next morning, and I get a phone, and the phone rings at about 8 o'clock in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
And it's my brother Steve out in Los Angeles. He goes, man, are you ready for the gig of gigs? Steve, have you been up all night? Because I have. I'm not sure. I said, what are you talking about? He said, well, look. He said, you know, I work at the Guitar Center on Hollywood Boulevard. I said, yeah. He goes, man, Stephen Stills came in yesterday. And he's looking for a keyboard playing guitar player. And I told him about you and having worked at Stax and everything. He said, I've got his phone number. You need to call him.
Wow.
And I'm like,
whoa.
And I'm like, come on, man. You know, because Stills was one of my idols, okay?
Right.
I mean, from the Buffalo Springfield on up to the whole thing. I mean, Stephen Stills was the shit. I mean,
Manassas.
Yeah.
Oh.
But I mean, his playing, his singing, everything about him was just, yeah. And so I'm like, man, look, if you're messing with me, this is not funny. I said, I don't know if you realize how much I respect this man, but he goes, no, take down this number. Call him at noon your time. I said, okay. Wait around a couple hours, 12 o'clock. Dial the number, rang twice. Hello? Stephen Stills, please. Who's calling? Oh God, this is him. I said, well, my name's Greg Redding. I'm a musician from Memphis. Oh, I talked to your brother yesterday at the Guitar Center, man. You guys played at Stax? I went, yeah. He said, how soon can you be out here?
No
I
kidding.
said, I'll be there tomorrow. He goes, great. He says, call me when you get in town. I said, okay. See, my mom lived in Venice, so I had a place to stay.
Yeah.
And I didn't have any money, so I called her. I said, can you spot me an airplane ticket to out there. I said, I think I just got a job with Stephen Stills. She's like, yeah, okay. So I get to L.A. and with my guitar, and all I have is my guitar in my hand. And so I called him when I got to my mom's house. He said, okay, I live in Bel Air on Stone Canyon Road.
Whoa.
I said, okay. I said, I'm not real familiar with the area. I said, but my brother used to be a cab driver, so he can maybe draw me some directions. Well, I got into Bel Air, but I'm lost as last year's Easter egg as far as where Stone Canyon Road is. And I remember I stopped at a stop sign up in this neighborhood, and a car pulled behind me. I went, I just got to do this. So I stopped and got out. You know, I said, I know this looks weird. I said, but I'm trying to find such and such Stone Canyon Road. Could you point me in the right direction? Of course, with my southern accent, he's probably like, this boy just come in off the last load of turnips.
Yeah.
And he showed me he said, it's that road right, the second street, take a left, you'll be right there. And I said, thank you. So I got there, rang the bell at the gate. Yeah. I said, hey, I'm the guy from Memphis. Oh, okay. Gate opens, drive my car up in there. It's Betty Gravel's old house.
Wow.
You know, and I mean, it's a big house on a big piece of property, okay?
Uh-huh.
So he meets me at the front door, just the nicest guy. Hey, how you doing? Come on downstairs. We're set up in the den down here. And it's Greg Taylor.
Yeah.
And a couple other guys, but I immediately saw who he was. And we just started sitting around, and I noticed on the floor against the walls, first of all, there was gold records and platinum records everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And there was just as many unopened ones leaning against the wall on the floor.
Uh-huh.
And next to that was all these incredible guitars, Firebirds and Gretsch White Falcons. And then there's this bookcase that would cover this whole wall right here, about 10 feet tall. And I'm looking, he goes, yeah, these are my Martins. He goes, those are my 50s, these are my 60s, and these are the 70s. He said, that one there, that's Mother Maybelle Carter's guitar. I got that.
Whoa.
He said, but all the really old ones are in a vault. I'm like, Jesus Moses. So I go, he said, we're going to start recording tomorrow night at the record plant. Be there at 7 o'clock.
You didn't have to play for him or anything?
I just poked around a little bit.
Wow.
And I'm just like, because I'm in the presence of one of my gods, you know.
Right.
I mean, it's just like, and days went on, and I started realizing it wasn't happening. I wasn't I was choking.
Uh-huh.
I was absolutely so overwhelmed by his presence that it's like if I'd have gone up to bat against Sandy Koufax or something, I couldn't get the bat off my shoulder.
Right.
And after about a week and a half, he said, man, you know, you're a really great guy and everything, but I just really don't think this is going to work out. And it crushed me.
I bet.
I mean, it was like, you know, I had to come back. And I've always been honest about it. You know, I mean, I've always told people, I choked, you know. I'm not going to lie about it. Yeah, I absolutely frickin' choked on the thing, you know.
I started a few weeks ago asking everybody I talked to tell me a story. I have a particular story I'd like for you to tell.
Okay.
That you just told me before we started the interview.
All right.
About playing with Albert King.
Yeah, I guess you could call that your stupid white boy story. It really is kind of what it would have to be. Yeah, because it was really one of the eye openers for me. And yeah, we were just talking about it. It was like
let me set this up just a little bit. When I was talking to Eric Hughes,
right,
last week,
right,
and he said that he was talking about how people in Memphis took all these great musicians for granted. And said, you know, people would just be, going, oh my God, you know, and said, yeah, that's Albert King. He comes by after his gigs. He's here all the time. Yeah. Not that much, but that's pretty much the way that you were thinking. I would imagine.
Well, here I am. Okay. I've just been hired. I've heard the name Albert King. Okay. I knew who he was. I knew he was a blues guitar player.
Uh-huh.
And what I had heard was like, okay, it's a gig. So I took the gig, and I remember I'd been in the band about 2 or 3 weeks, and we played in Iowa City, Iowa, at the college there. And Albert was the headliner, and the opening acts were Jay Giles
Mm-hmm.
and Frampton Camel with Peter Frampton's first solo endeavor outside of Humble Pie, which Humble Pie was one of my favorite bands ever. I saw them in a club about the size of this house in Chicago one time, a place called Mother Blues, and they just ate my lunch. But anyway.
Smoking.
Oh, God. So I'm sitting outside of the dressing room. We've done our sound check and everything, and I'm just kind of waiting for the show. And all of a sudden I look up, and coming from the stage to my dressing room is Jay Giles and Peter Frampton. And I'm like, oh, my God, they're coming my way, man. Oh, man. They're getting closer. They're here. Hey, what's going on? You know. And they went, aren't you in Albert King's band? I went, yeah, I'm the rhythm guitar player, sort of. They go, well, look, man, is there any possible way? It would mean the world to us if you could figure a way to get us in to meet him. We know he's kind of, likes to stay to himself. And then there's all this reverence coming from these two guys. And I said, why? They go, what do you mean, why? I said, to me, it just sounds like a guy that plays a lot of Jimi Hendrix and Eric Clapton licks. I can't even put into words the look. I mean, both these guys give me a look like, are you the stupidest son of a bitch that's ever walked the face? I mean, are you kidding? Are you kidding? I go, what? And they said, man, you're really not kidding. I said, that's what Eric Clapton and Jimi Hendrix and Jimmy Page play Albert King licks. He wrote the book. And I went, wow, wait a minute. And the little light goes off on top of you. First of all, I'm blushing, because I've just made an absolute blithering idiot of myself.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just like, oh, geez, man, these guys, they're going to talk about me to their grandchildren. About the dumb white guitar player that played for Albert King that didn't even know who in the hell he was, So then I'd get on stage with Albert and I'd start realizing, oh my God. Yeah, they're trying to do Albert King licks because they can't do them because he plays upside down and backwards. And I just want to say that everything I said can pretty much be backed up by factual information somewhere on the internet, but maybe a little embellishment from here, after 48 years, know.
Well, there you go. The important thing, it's entertaining.
It is entertaining.
Truth or not, it's entertaining.
It's pretty much all the way it happened, folks. And, man, this has been fun. I love going back and reminiscing on this stuff. It's good for the heart and the soul, I think, and you doing this, I got to tell you, I think that the people you've covered are so pertinent, and there's such a depth, a wealth of information and talent that you've tapped into, because I know everybody's got their own stories.
Well, thank you so much, Greg. I really appreciate your time, and I've really enjoyed this interview. Memphis Music Interview can be heard every Tuesday night at 10 p.m. Memphis time and Thursday morning at 10 a.m. Memphis time. Memphis Music Interview is produced by McCracken Productions exclusively for allmemphismusic.com.